and when you feel as if you'd like to play something a little bit scary.
No one ever thought Fred Rogers, the gentle man behind Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, could harbor secrets. But what happened when they finally opened his locked drawer? The answer is chilling. Hidden inside was a letter, carefully folded, aged, and almost impossible to read without a sense of dread. This was not a simple note or a forgotten personal reminder. It was a confession, a glimpse into a side of Fred Rogers that the world never knew. For decades, he was the symbol of kindness, calm, and unconditional love for children across America. Millions grew up trusting his words, believing in the safety and warmth of his neighborhood. But that letter shattered everything. The contents were unexpected, even shocking. It was written in meticulous handwriting, revealing fears, regrets, and thoughts that seemed to contrast sharply with the image the world held of him. Experts who examined the letter say it speaks to struggles and emotions that many could relate to, yet few imagined someone like Fred would experience them. The words echo with a sense of loneliness, perhaps even a warning or a plea that was never meant for the public eye. And the question everyone is asking now, why did he hide it? Why lock it away? As investigators and biographers piece together the story behind the drawer and the letter, the public is left grappling with a complex reality. Even the most beloved figures can have hidden depths, secrets they protect until the very end. This revelation does not erase Fred Rogers' legacy, but it adds a haunting layer to it, one that forces us to reconsider the private lives of those we admire the most. When the drawer was finally opened, the world didn't just find a piece of paper. They found a side of Fred Rogers no one was prepared to see. And as the letter's contents circulate, millions are left asking themselves, how well do we Fred Rogers was a name synonymous with kindness, calm, and the gentle wisdom of Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. Generations of children grew up feeling safe in his presence, believing that nothing harmful could touch the world inside his carefully constructed neighborhood. But behind that calm exterior, behind the familiar sweaters and soft-spoken greetings, Fred kept secrets. It all began when a group of archivists and biographers were given access to Fred Rogers' private belongings, preserved after his passing. Among the hundreds of boxes of memorabilia, scripts, and photographs, one object stood out, a small wooden drawer, locked and tucked away in a cabinet that had seen decades of quiet life. The drawer seemed unassuming, almost innocent, yet it carried an aura of mystery. Why would Fred Rogers, a man so open and approachable, lock away something so deliberately? The team tried every key, every technique to open it, but the lock refused to yield. Hours turned into days as curiosity grew. Finally, after careful examination, the drawer was forced open, revealing its contents. There, nestled among old papers and trinkets, was a single envelope, yellowed with age and sealed in a way that suggested it had never been touched. Opening it was like opening a door into a part of Fred Rogers' life that no one had ever imagined. The letter inside was written in his unmistakable handwriting, neat and precise, each stroke deliberate. But the words it contained were chilling. They revealed a vulnerability, a side of Fred that contradicted everything the public had known. Here was a man who had spent his life teaching children about love, kindness, and understanding, now exposing fears and regrets that were deeply personal. The letter spoke of loneliness, of internal battles, and of moments when the facade of calm was not enough to soothe his own heart. Experts later described the text as haunting, a reminder that even the most beloved figures can carry hidden pain. It raised questions about the pressures of fame, the cost of living as a symbol of goodness, and the complexity of a private life lived in the shadows of public expectation. For the world, Fred Rogers had always been perfect, a constant source of comfort. But this letter revealed a more human side, a man who, despite his kindness, experienced doubt, fear, and isolation. And it made everyone wonder, why had he locked it away? Why had he kept such raw emotions hidden from the public eye? The answer, it seemed, would only come with time, as biographers, historians, and even family members pieced together the context of the letter. But one thing was certain. The drawer's opening changed the way the world would forever view Fred Rogers. Behind the warm smile and gentle voice lay a private story, one that challenged the simple narratives of his life and forced a reconsideration of what it truly meant to be human. Ever truly know someone? As the envelope was carefully opened, the archivists held their breath. The paper inside was delicate, almost fragile with age, and the handwriting was unmistakably Fred Rogers, steady, neat, and deeply personal. But the words it carried were unlike anything anyone expected from the beloved host. This was not a cheerful note nor a simple reflection on life. It was a window into a private struggle, a confession that revealed the man behind the gentle demeanor. The letter began with a tone of quiet introspection. Fred wrote about the weight of living up to the expectations placed upon him. To the outside world, he was the embodiment of kindness and moral clarity, a trusted figure who seemed incapable of error. Children adored him, parents admired him, and colleagues respected him. But beneath that polished exterior, he admitted to feelings of inadequacy, doubt, and loneliness that few could have imagined. He spoke of nights spent wrestling with the fear that he could never truly meet the ideal he projected to the world. While he was always the comforting figure on television, in private he wrestled with a sense of isolation, a struggle to reconcile the man he wanted to be with the man the public demanded. Fred's words were striking in their honesty. There was no pretense, no effort to maintain the image that had made him famous. Instead, there was raw humanity, a vulnerability that was both shocking and heartbreaking. One passage, in particular, caught the attention of the archivists. He described moments when he questioned whether his work truly made a difference. He acknowledged the joy he felt in teaching children about empathy, love, and respect, but admitted that he sometimes feared the world outside his neighborhood of make-believe was far harsher than he could ever protect them from. These were thoughts he had never voiced publicly, thoughts that contrasted sharply with the unshakable calm he projected on screen. The letter also revealed personal regrets, missed opportunities for deeper human connection, moments where he felt misunderstood, and a profound sense of responsibility that weighed heavily on his conscience. Fred seemed to fear that his kindness was not enough, that despite his best efforts, the world could not be shielded from cruelty, disappointment, and loss. It was a reminder that even the most beloved figures carry burdens unseen by the public eye. As the archivists read on, they realized that the letter was not merely a diary entry or a fleeting lament. It was a carefully written confession, almost as if Fred had intended it to be discovered one day, but only after he was gone. There was a sense of urgency in his words, a desire to convey lessons learned from hardship and resilience, tempered by honesty about his own fears. It was a final testament to the complexity of his life, a reminder that the man who brought comfort to millions was, at heart, profoundly human. The implications were enormous. This letter had the power to reshape the public's understanding of Fred Rogers, to challenge the simple narrative of unwavering positivity. Yet it also underscored why he had kept it locked away. He knew the world adored the figure he presented, and revealing his private struggles could alter that perception. It was not a document of shame, but one of vulnerability, reflection, and courage. The courage to admit imperfection while still dedicating his life to others. By the end of the reading, the room was silent. The letter had revealed a side of Fred Rogers that was deeply moving and haunting at once. It was a reminder that heroes are human, that even those who seem perfect can carry private burdens, and that the world's perception of someone rarely tells the full story. As the archivists carefully returned the letter to the drawer, they knew that its discovery marked the beginning of a new chapter in the understanding of Fred Rogers, a chapter that blended admiration with a profound respect for his hidden humanity. News of the discovery spread like wildfire. The world had long admired Fred Rogers as the gentle, unwavering figure who brought comfort and lessons of kindness into millions of homes. But the revelation of his hidden letter, tucked away in a locked drawer, sent shockwaves through fans, biographers, and even casual observers. Social media lit up with disbelief, articles emerged in every major outlet, and debates began about what this newfound glimpse into his private life meant for his legacy. For many, the letter was not a scandal. It was a revelation of the profound humanity behind the persona they had loved for decades. Fred Rogers had always been a symbol of perfection, a man whose calm voice and gentle demeanor seemed untouchable. But the letter reminded the world that even its most cherished figures grappled with fear, doubt, and solitude. People began to share their own stories of vulnerability, connecting with the struggles Fred had expressed, and it created a wave of empathy that spanned generations. Historians and biographers weighed in, noting the significance of the letter in understanding Fred Rogers as a complex human being. They emphasized that his struggles did not diminish his achievements. Rather, they enhanced them. To impact millions with such profound kindness while carrying unseen burdens was a testament to his resilience and dedication. The public began to see him not just as a television icon, but as a man who had wrestled with the same fears and insecurities that so many experience in private. Psychologists, analyzing the letter, pointed out that Fred's reflections offered a rare look into the mental and emotional life of someone in the public eye. They highlighted how maintaining a constant image of perfection can intensify feelings of isolation, and how the act of keeping such private thoughts hidden can weigh heavily over time. Fred's words, while personal, resonated universally. They reminded everyone that vulnerability is not a weakness, and that even the strongest people need support and understanding. Fans reacted with a mixture of shock and admiration. Online communities and fan pages buzzed with discussions, with many expressing gratitude for the honesty embedded in the letter. Some admitted they had always struggled with self-doubt, and seeing that someone they had looked up to also faced similar challenges was both comforting and humanizing. Others were struck by the stark contrast between the man on their screens and the private struggles he endured, prompting reflection on how often society idealizes public figures without acknowledging their humanity. Even Fred's closest collaborators and friends were impacted. Many shared private anecdotes that aligned with the themes of the letter, confirming that the fears and doubts he expressed were consistent with their experiences with him off-camera. Yet, they also reaffirmed that these struggles had never diminished his kindness, patience, or ability to inspire. Instead, they highlighted the courage it took to maintain his dedication to others despite personal hardship. In the weeks that followed, discussions about the letter became more than just curiosity. They sparked broader conversations about mental health, vulnerability, and the importance of understanding that everyone, no matter how seemingly perfect, experiences struggle. Fred Rogers, long admired for teaching children empathy and compassion, had now taught the world an additional lesson: that courage lies not just in what you show, but also in acknowledging what you feel. By the time the initial shock subsided, the letter had cemented itself as a poignant reminder of Fred Rogers' humanity. The world didn't see him as diminished, but as deeper, richer, and more relatable than ever before. His legacy was no longer just about the lessons he taught children. It was also about the courage he exhibited in living authentically, even when no one else could see his private battles. And as discussions continued, one truth became undeniably clear. The man behind the sweater and the gentle voice was as remarkable for his vulnerabilities as he was for his wisdom. The discovery of Fred Rogers' letter didn't just ripple through the public. It deeply affected those who knew him personally. Friends, colleagues, and family members found themselves confronted with a side of Fred they had never fully seen, even though they had been closest to him. For decades, he had maintained the same calm, composed presence that the world admired. And now, through his words, they were granted access to the private struggles he had carried quietly. Family members described mixed emotions. There was sorrow, yes, for the loneliness and doubt that Fred had endured in silence. There was surprise at the depth of his reflections, and admiration for his ability to translate those inner struggles into meaningful action on a daily basis. For some, reading the letter was like finally glimpsing the man behind the persona they had always loved. They felt pride for his dedication to others, tempered with a profound sadness that he had felt so much alone at times. Friends and colleagues shared memories that suddenly took on new meaning. Moments of quiet introspection they had once observed in Fred were now understood as part of a much larger emotional landscape. Conversations that once seemed casual now hinted at the internal battles he had fought daily. They realized that the empathy, patience, and understanding he showed to everyone around him were not effortless traits. They were cultivated despite a personal struggle with fear, self-doubt, and the burden of expectation. The letter also prompted a reevaluation of Fred's legacy. Public perception had long focused on the kindness he displayed on television, the lessons he taught children, and the moral guidance he provided to millions. But this private confession added a new dimension: the courage it took to live authentically while under constant scrutiny, and the vulnerability required to maintain empathy for others when one struggled internally. It was a reminder that heroism is not measured only by perfection, but by the ability to persevere and make a difference despite imperfection. Psychologists and cultural commentators highlighted the significance of the letter for society as a whole. Fred Rogers had always championed emotional intelligence, compassion, and understanding, but the letter illuminated the depth of his own emotional experiences. It demonstrated that even those who teach others about resilience and kindness are not immune to hardship. In many ways, it made his life's work even more impactful, because it showed that the lessons he conveyed were informed by real personal experience. For fans, the letter humanized Fred in ways that strengthened their connection to him. People shared stories online about how his television programs had shaped their childhoods, and now many added reflections on how his honesty in the letter had inspired them to acknowledge their own vulnerabilities. Teachers, parents, and counselors began citing the letter as a tool to discuss emotional health, illustrating that everyone, even the most revered figures, faces challenges that must be recognized and understood. The archivists who discovered the letter reflected on the responsibility of handling such a personal document. They debated whether to release it fully or to preserve it as a historical artifact, emphasizing its importance while respecting the privacy Fred had initially intended. Ultimately, the letter was shared selectively, allowing the world to learn from it without compromising the intimacy and personal nature of his reflections. By the end of the discussions, one sentiment emerged clearly: Fred Rogers' legacy was now richer than ever. The letter did not diminish the man the world adored. It expanded the understanding of his life, revealing a figure of remarkable empathy, resilience, and courage. For those who loved him, it was a bittersweet revelation, a reminder that even the gentlest souls carry unseen burdens, but also that such burdens can coexist with extraordinary kindness. Fred Rogers' story was now complete, not only in its public accomplishments, but also in the quiet, profound humanity captured in the words he had carefully locked away.